So Nate Wiles has joined us. Nate, how you doing today, sir? Nate, do we have audio with you?
Yep, you do. How's that for timing when my webcam falls off my monitor, huh?
That's okay. We're all victims to technology.
Fail fast, fail cheap.
That's right. Exactly right. Nate,
Mostly fail fast.
Before I go into asking some questions of you and pinning you down today, I'm just going to give a quick brief bio to people that may not know you, so they get to know just a little bit more while we're chatting today. Nate Wiles with us today is the executive director for Live and Work in Maine, where he and his staff focus on raising awareness about the career opportunities and world-class quality of life here in Maine that we all know about. Nate's also the co-founder of Flight Deck Brewing in the Brunswick Landing, and that's the former redeveloped Brunswick Naval Air Station, which is a phenomenal location. And Nate's company there is in a fantastic facility there as well. The production brewery is open to the public, offering beer, food, and family-friendly events. With that, Nate, I'd like to ask you just a couple of questions. Could you just briefly describe your private element right now, Flight Deck Brewing? What type of business is it, and your product lines, and what makes it unique?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Mike. Today is certainly, I've been tuning in throughout the day, and it's what a wonderful cross-section of folks you've had the opportunity to chat with. So thanks for pulling this together and your leadership in this. Flight Deck, which you can see virtually behind me in the background, as Mike said, is on Brunswick Landing. We're about 3.5 years old. We are a production brewery that manufactures 100% of the product that we sell on site. So you'd know us, we're in the same category, we're a member of the Maine Brewers Guild. So we're a production brewery. What sets us apart a little bit is first and foremost, our location and our venue. So one of the reasons, or in fact, the reason that Flight Deck exists is that we saw an opportunity. Well, frankly, we felt a very selfish need for more casual gathering space in the greater Brunswick community. I was working with Live and Work in Maine early on as a volunteer at the time. We just moved to Harpswell up from Portland. And so going from the Portland social scene and business community to Harpswell, Maine, where Harpswell is one of, if not the oldest communities per capita, we have some wonderful friends that are twice our age plus, but it was hard to come by a social scene that was different than that. And so we saw this huge opportunity to facilitate not just a younger social scene, but also a social scene or an environment for which folks of all ages can get together to casually socialize. The Greater Brunswick community historically has been a wonderful dining destination. We have a wonderful theater program. So there's wonderful formal events and venues out there. There were not a lot of casual venues. In fact, there were hardly any a few years ago when we started Flight Deck. So the driving impetus a few years ago was to very much create a space, and the space quickly spiraled into a brewery business model because at the time there were no production breweries in the area. And so trying to solve multiple challenges at once, again, selfishly driven because we were living in the community. And that's quickly spiraled into what Flight Deck is today, which is a family-friendly venue. So about 75% of our business is on site, on premise. In 2019, that was about 95% of our business. And so we can talk about this a little bit later, but the growth of our business is very much in packaging beer in cans and distributing that across the state and soon to be country. And so that's been the growth, but the core of what Flight Deck is in our soul and very much in our reputation and experience is the facility on Brunswick Landing, the former Brunswick Naval Air Station. The facility was built by the US Navy in 2003 as a small arms range. So we have a number of folks who come in and say, oh yeah, I used to shoot guns in here. Back when it was entirely concrete, no windows at the time, we put all those in. It was a shooting range. And so it's a rectangular concrete bulletproof building that we converted into a brewery. And so it's been a wonderful showpiece for the culture and heritage of the area, but also a wonderful opportunity to showcase what's possible by taking the old and transforming it into the new without destroying the heritage of the old. And so that's been our venture, and excited to be here. So thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks. I've been down a few times to the location. It really, you guys have done a spectacular job just blending in what was there before. and keeping it part of the basis history, but really paying, I think, it forward to really the new life of what's happening there on the Naval Air Station in its redeveloped form. And so you got a great location. It really just it's impressive because it just feels right as a place to meet up with friends. Every time I go in there, it's live, conversation and people laughing and so forth. So I just really credit you guys for creating the environment that you were going for. The other thing too, I'm gonna put a shameless plug on your behalf. A lot of businesses that I observe, I really would wish they would do more of a branded sort of approach in regard to getting their branding, their messaging, their positioning. You guys just crush it. I mean, you pay homage to the aviation theme from Flight Deck and your name all the way to your products, to how you express the art and the illustration. And I'm going to encourage everybody to go on that website, but we're going to obviously link it up to our post event website. But kudos to you and your partners of really getting the essence of what that company and what it stands for. And could you speak a little bit to that, of how you got there and how you really fully embraced into that?
Wow. Well, thank you. First of all, that's a very generous compliment. And I got to say, you've made me thirsty. So excuse me for a moment as I shamelessly plug drinking beer. So I did have to crack. I'm sorry, Mike. I did crack one open before we started. I thought it was only appropriate to enjoy a beverage while we're chatting. It's all business. That's
right. No, nothing wrong with that. So go ahead.
So, well, what you brought up is something we've been talking about this a lot over the last few weeks, because we're at this exciting point in our business, driven by COVID, or excuse me, accelerated by COVID, by probably a year or two, and sort of forced our hand into doing things that were on the dream wish list for when we had time, so to speak, and suddenly we have a lot of time and capacity, and that is distribution of our beer outside of our immediate community. So over the last 6 or 8 months, we started self-distributing our beer, which means that we are the ones that make it, and we're the ones that deliver it and sell it directly to a retailer. Maine law allows for that now, which is very exciting. It's a pretty unique opportunity for beverage manufacturers to do that in the state. So we control the whole sales process in Maine. And so we've got our employees in a Flight Deck branded van that take the beer from the brewery and bring it right to the retailer. And that's restricted just to the state of Maine. So we're distributed statewide. If you go on our website, we have a beer finder tool. You can see what stores our beer is currently in. But that opportunity, there's only so much in Maine, especially in this year with tourism has been better than people anticipated, but it's still less. And certainly we're a state of 1.3 million people. There are a lot of craft beer drinkers for sure. And we're very excited to make the most of our home. But there's also a great opportunity to reach aviation enthusiasts, U.S. Navy veterans, et cetera, folks with a natural affinity for our brand countrywide, if not globally. And so we've been talking a lot about how do we translate a brand that we were intentional at the beginning about not being quote unquote Brunswick Beer Company. We very much wanted a brand that could resonate with folks regardless of where they were. But we did not have a business plan for reaching those folks outside of Maine. We knew what would eventually be required of us, but we didn't have a plan to get there because we knew there was so much opportunity here in Maine that we wanted to focus on for the first 5 or 10 years, was the thinking at the time anyway. So now we're going through that process of essentially, what if the beers that we're right now distributing in Maine, what if they showed up in Arizona or California or Florida, next month, which turns out is increasingly a likely possibility. So we've been going through that conversation of the things that we got very lucky with, and frankly, we are very fortunate to be the themed brewery that we are in terms of aviation and the heritage of the Brunswick Naval Air Station. Those themes resonate with folks in a very timeless, geographic, independent way, and some of that was intentional. And so I definitely pat some of our team members on the back for capitalizing on that. But a lot of that was luck in that we felt it. And so selfishly, we knew that it meant a lot to us and our neighbors. And to us, that was sort of good enough in the startup process that, we knew we wanted to have an impact on the community. And we thought this brand was a way to do it. In retrospect, we had a lot more luck involved in that than we should have. And so to preempt in case you ask me a question about what do we wish we had done differently, one of the things I wish we had done differently is to be more conscious of developing a brand at the beginning that was applicable to the target audience we knew we wanted to reach. We got very lucky in having done a lot of that anyway, but not all of it. I think we could have done a better job early on. So now we're having the conversation of how do we evolve what we have, and how do we start to develop new products and new brands and opportunities like that that can reach the audience we knew we wanted to reach all along. We just haven't been as purposeful about it to date. And so that's we're sort of at that point right now, Mike. Frankly, the blunt answer to your question is, we have been guided very much by our community to date in our facility. If you come into our facility, you'll see paraphernalia and memorabilia from decades. There are folks that are 30 years old that have dropped off, patches. We've got a whole wall of patches. We've got hats. We've got actual aircraft pilot helmets sitting on our wall that folks have donated to us to display. Everybody from 30 years old on up to, we've had a 99-year-old veteran who flew one of the planes that is now on display here on the landing, the P-2 Pegasus. He was the gentleman who flew that actual plane in his time of service. And so we've had this wonderful community of folks that have contributed to that feeling. So this is not we did not develop a brand book and a set of guidelines that determined what was hung on the wall. We simply took a very organic but purposeful approach to how do we display our facility, how do we decorate our facility, but also what kind of experience are we providing. Part of that is name, part of that is brand, and part of that is also just how do we be authentic to who we are, and what do we say no to, right? So how do we do from the types of beers we produce to the kinds of events that we support to our charitable contributions. We're fortunate to have very fortunate to have such an incredibly talented team of people at Flight Deck that all live and breathe that soul. And so to some extent, we started there, and we've been reverse engineering the traditional brand book, if you will.
It's interesting, Nick, because just hearing you speak, I really pulled away a couple of words, but intentional and purposeful really speak loud and clear. And it's interesting. I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs who say when they look backwards, they wish that they were more purposeful and with intent of what they were doing. I would say, Joe, just as the casual onlooker, I appreciate you providing sort of the look behind the screen. But I think it looked seamless to us, because I just kept on saying to myself, wow, these guys have really hit this. They've leaned into that sort of aviation and feel of it. They've created this brand that, as you mentioned, I didn't know those stories, but it's just bigger than the product itself. It really is that camaraderie of people who rally around that theme element. And you're right, it's worldwide and it's generational wide. And so kudos to you guys for doing it, because it is funny when I look at it and observe the brand, I said, wow, this is with purpose and intent. So I'm really glad you mentioned those words, because I think that's what entrepreneurs sometimes they miss, where they have a good idea, they're servicing their market niche, but they forget that it has to be bigger than just the product itself. And what would you say when you started the company? What was the toughest thing that you encountered to as an obstacle or a misconception on your part of what you were getting into?
Well, I think the answer to that is actually is a add on to what you were just saying, Mike. Thank you again. You've been very generous in your compliments today. But I think a key component, if not the key component to having at least conveyed to you and some other folks who experience it, if your experience is one of feeling like we were very intentional and authentic, I can say at the very least it's because we're confident in who we are. And I say we, meaning the entire team. We're a team of 8 at the brewery, combination of mostly full-time, a couple of part-time folks, but we're a team of 8. Sometimes we surge up to 10 or 12 seasonally. And what's true about us all is that every single one of us is very confident in who Flight Deck is in terms of our soul and identity as a brand, but also in terms of what kind of impact we want to have positively on the community. And so one thing I wish we had when we got started, we were very fortunate to have a small team of people that defaulted to having a strong sense of confidence and sort of a hold your head up high and plow forward because everything's going to be fine. attitude, and that's critically important. And frankly, especially in 2020, that has kept us not just thriving, not just surviving, but thriving. It's that sense of optimism. It's that sense of, eyes on the horizon. Because if you've got a great product and you've got a great service and you believe in yourself, truly, not just metaphorically, but if you truly believe that what you're doing and how you're doing it, more importantly, is having a positive impact, then that will see you to the next step. And so I think first and foremost, that's only possible if every single person on the team lives that. You're only as strong as the weakest ambassador, and you're only as authentic as the least authentic person. And so we're first and foremost very fortunate to have everybody that lives that at the A+ level, so to speak.
I think
so it's an indirect answer to your question.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, Nate. Actually, it's a great segue to jumping into a couple of questions to what you're up to with you and your staff that live and work in Maine, and what are you looking to see happen going forward, and just to describe a little bit of what's out there now.
Yeah, so live and work in Maine. So we're a nonprofit organization. For those who aren't familiar, our job, we've existed for about 5 years now. Shoot, I lost track. 5 years. Wow. Yeah, 2015. So we're founded by Edward McCursey of ProSearch in Portland. The idea originally, so Ed founded Live and Work in Maine as a brand identity and as a website billboard, essentially. He's a dad. He's got 3 kids. All 3 of his kids at the time were very interested in leaving the state. They all did to some extent. So his very selfish interest was in creating a message that could resonate to other kids of his peers that could help lure them back, because selfishly he wants his kids around for the holidays without having to fly home, right? So what started as sort of a core message and a billboard quickly spiraled. And I met Ed 2 weeks after that, after he had launched the website, because I had lived that story. I'm a boomerang myself, in that I grew up in Maine. I went to high school in Cumberland at Greeley High School. My Greeley High guidance counselor at the time told me that I could do better than go to UMaine in state, and that I should look elsewhere for a real opportunity, quote unquote. I fortunately ignored that, went to UMaine, and the culture at UMaine was very much, hey, if you really want to get a good job, you got to leave the state. And that's where all the smart people go. And so I thought I was smart. I don't think I was really at the time, but I thought I was smart enough to leave the state for a good job. And so I did. And fortunately, as soon as I landed in the Midwest, I realized, oh, shoot, I had been duped. And there really is a lot going on in Maine. We just weren't conscious of it. And so that's quickly what Live and Work in Maine has embraced as our mission, is to ensure that everybody who's here and everybody who's not, but may want to be, is consciously aware of the opportunities that exist here. We're not trying to be something we're not. We're not trying to dupe anybody into coming to Maine that doesn't enjoy 4 seasons, for example. We're not a big enough state, and we don't have enough housing stock to support that anyway. What we're trying to be is the best version of ourselves, and that includes that needs to be necessary to attract a diverse population of folks, both from where they're coming from, as well as the language they speak and the work that they do, and the skin color that they have, and the gender identity, et cetera. That needs to be a core part of our identity, as well as it needs to be a core part of our identity to make sure that folks who want to stay do, but we don't restrict people who want to leave, and be okay with the fact that sometimes the best way to come back to Maine is by leaving it and discovering what you had, because sometimes you never know what you have until you don't. And so our mission and the way we work is primarily with major employers in the States. We have 15 employer partners that we work very closely with. They underwrite the majority of our effort financially, and we also work with them tactically one-on-one to make sure that they have the best tools and resources available to attract people back. And then we translate those tools. The benefit of working very intimately with certain employers is that we can rapid prototype, fail fast, fail cheap, develop processes, content, opportunities, programs, et cetera, that are then scalable and available to everybody. So, we are about the entire state of Maine. We're not focused on any one geographic area in the state. And so our mission this year has been, frankly, moving faster. Our impact has been bigger this year than we ever could have imagined, in that a lot of what we were trying to build a foundation for over the next few years, developing a strong culture of supporting folks who work for an employer out of state, i.e. remote workers, and promoting some of the things that traditionally have had a bad rap in Maine, for example, internet access. It turns out that there is a lot of great internet access around Maine. It's not to say we can't do better and we need to improve it, but that is not a barrier to moving to the Augusta region or even to Presque Isle or to Fort Kent. There is internet to be found in those places. And so between now and when we have internet everywhere, which will come eventually, but it's measured in years, we need to do a better job of telling the story about who we are today, which is we are a fairly well-connected state. We are a very well, take internet out of it, we are an incredibly tightly connected community in terms of the people and the culture and the connections that we have. The saying my grandfather taught me as a child is that Maine has 2 degrees of separation, and they're probably both related. So if you track your cousins well enough, there's bound to be a connection there to Maine. And so our mission is to bring that message out and to increase awareness about what is here, and then to help folks along their journey. We provide tools and resources so that folks can self-serve. We're not a recruiting agency. We don't place people in jobs. What we do is make sure that folks have the resources and opportunities to connect to the right communities, the right employers, and more importantly to each other, because we know that the recruiters at certain employers certainly do a lot of the heavy lifting in getting people here, but the most impactful salespeople that Maine has are us, our Mainers themselves, the people who live here. And so having folks proudly identify as Mainers, which is our definition of a Mainer, by the way, is somebody who lives here. We don't really care or give a darn where you were born. As long as you're in Maine, you're a Mainer. And my personal opinion is if you're not in Maine, you're not a Mainer. I don't care if you were born here. You're welcome to come and reclaim that badge by moving back, but you don't get the benefit of calling yourself a Mainer unless you're living here full time, in our humble opinion. So we're very excited for Maine's future. And to boil back to your initial question, Mike, 2020 has been a phenomenal opportunity for the entire state. The Portland area is often the one that shows up on the listicles and the top 10 lists. And, they get the press, so to speak, as being a great destination. And they are, and they will continue to be a great destination. There's a lot happening there. But this has been, we believe, rural Maine's time to shine at a time when people literally want space, and they have identified quality of life as first and foremost the most important thing, as we've all sort of had a recollection or we've come closer to our mortality this year in a lot of ways. And so identifying what is really important. Well, what's really important is I can, let my dog out the back door without having to worry about it. I can let my kids run around in the yard without having to worry about them. I can have a community without having, 60 people above me and 60 people below me in an apartment building. Whatever it is that you value, Maine has a lot of that to offer. And so from Aroostook County all the way down to Kittery and everything in between, it's sort of an equal opportunity this year for Maine to showcase itself and each community to showcase itself as a great place to live and work. And so we're seeing that immediate impact from the housing market and employers reporting a lot of interest in folks applying for jobs who are either working remotely here already or interested in coming here. So there's an immediate impact that we're seeing, and that's the housing bubble, so to speak, that we're currently in. But frankly, we think this will last 5 or 10 years plus, especially if we capitalize on the moment to brand ourselves well, and in that we are a high quality destination, right? Maine is not just good enough. We believe that Maine is the best place to end up. We've got the cleanest air, we've got the cleanest water, we've got phenomenally high quality public schools, we've got some of the safest communities in the nation by a lot of different metrics. We have a growing, and not big enough yet, but we have a growing array of diverse communities. We have a lot of different languages spoken across the state, and those populations are growing. And then we've got the option to live on an island out to sea, as well as on the top of a mountain if you head out northwest. And so from walking on the beach first thing in the morning to skiing in the afternoon, or just staring out at your own private 200 acres for the price of an equivalent studio apartment in New York City, Maine's got it all. And so our mission is just to get that word out and say, hey, if you want what we have to offer, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, and I think that the time is absolutely exactly right, Nate, where I think every community and region in Maine is shining right now, and there's a lot to be shown from them, and there always has been. It's just that I think even Mainers are recognizing the different regions and how incredible that they are, and whatever they may offer, whether it be employment, recreation, just quite honestly, a space to get out and stretch your legs a bit. But it is true. I've seen it myself here during COVID, where even though I was born and raised in Maine, in one of the more rural rural counties and communities. I'm just really impressed of people looking at this as an opportunity to shine. You're a fantastic ambassador, you and your staff, Nate. And I just want to thank you for not only just being an entrepreneur and really pushing the value proposition out to Mainers, but also on all our behalf out there really waving the flag and trying to get people to understand that you can have it all. I always tell people, you know, it sounds a little corny, but you really can have it all. And I think we've been very privileged as Mainers. And now it's time, in order for all of us to have a real vibrant economy where we can keep our children, our kids, and grow forward. We do have to make sure that other people know of just the wonderful place that we have here. And as you pointed out, the people who already know it, who were Mainers, they'll come back. They'll be back, as we know, and as you shared your story. So Nate, I just want to really thank you for your time and the things that you've been doing, not only in the private side of what you do, but also in your public side for Live and Work in Maine. It's just been great to watch your journey the last several years that I've known you. And I wish you the best of luck in the organization as well as Flight Deck. And thanks for your time today and for joining us here at Conversion Create.
Mike, thank you. And you've been a phenomenal resource and leader in highlighting all this good stuff that's going on in Maine. So thank you for your continued effort and perseverance. Last shout out is that I know a lot of folks that are tuning in today. You know, I've met a lot of the folks I'm seeing on the list, but not everybody. I have a feeling more folks may know my colleague at Live and Work in Maine, Katie Shorey, who's also president of Startup Maine. And so if you all as entrepreneurs or folks in the space of wanting to support startups have a need to, or just an interest in connecting with us at Live and Work in Maine, please reach out. My email is nate@liveandworkinmaine.com. Although I know it's a dangerous thing to throw out a personal email on Zoom, but I did it. And Katie is available. I know a lot of you know her through Startup Maine, so you can reach her at Katie@Live and Work in Maine. And we'd love to hear from you and see how we can best support and get out the good stories. Thanks so much.
What we'll do, Nate, is we'll actually bring up Live and Work in Maine in our post-event website, but also
Great.
feature what Katie's doing at Startup Maine, which is fantastic as well. And it needs to be a resource that's recognized widespread in Maine, if not already. So thanks again, Nate. Much appreciated for your time and take care.
Thank you. Looking forward to hearing the next story. Cheers.
Thank you.